Welcome to the Inside Digital Transformation Podcast. Inside Digital Transformation explores how organizations of every size and shape are using technology today to survive and thrive in the face of relentless change. If you are a business or technology leader charged with making the most of digital transformation in your organization, then this podcast is for you. And now here's your host, Alan Bernard, a technology journalist, editor, and copywriter who has been covering the intersection of business and technology for over 2 decades.
Hi everyone, thanks for tuning in. Today I'm speaking with John Engates, Field Chief Technology Officer at the content delivery network and cybersecurity provider Cloudflare, about the impact AI will have on the ability of the good guys to secure an ever-increasing and porous network perimeter, as well as how the bad guys are using AI tools such as voice spoofing and deepfakes, combined with refined social engineering attacks to break down even the best defenses. John, thank you for being here.
Well, thanks for having me. I'm pleased to be on your podcast.
Today, obviously, we're talking about cybersecurity, the use of AI in cybersecurity, AI being the hottest topic in technology today, certainly enterprise technology. Kind of wanted to start off with level setting and kind of what's the current state of cybersecurity today. And this would be from a threat perspective, right? Not a remediation or, detection or anything like that. Because, I say in here in the notes I sent you, I said, the bad guys are winning, air quotes around winning. But it feels like it sometimes, even though, people such as you and I who know a little bit about it, understand that probably 99% or more of the threats are blocked before they ever generate an ounce of money or data or Bitcoin or whatever. But it just, they just need to be right once, and we need to be right 100% of the time. And that 100% just is pretty elusive to get to. So just kind of wanted to get your take on the current state of cybersecurity today.
Well, it's a good question. I get asked a lot about, what we're seeing. Cloudflare is in a position to see a lot of the threats and to see the landscape at sort of a macro view. Right. And so, as we, as a society, become more digital, it gets more complex. And right, you've got a lot more of our lives online, a lot more digital. The digital transformation is not just happening inside of enterprises; it's happening everywhere. And so, when you think about that and you zoom out, you do sort of see a cat and mouse kind of approach to cybersecurity. We're constantly trying to navigate around things like the economic downturn and geopolitical issues that have arisen over the last
state, right?
Nation states, and crypto has been a big part of facilitating cybercrime. So we've got all of those factors incentivizing it and making it easier for the perpetrators to carry it out and remain hidden and offshore and really out of arm's reach of the law enforcement. So the bad guys get an upper hand from that perspective. And when you flip over to the other side, inside the enterprise, you've got the challenges of post-pandemic remote and distributed work. You've got blurred boundaries between what's a personal device and what's a company device. You've got phishing threats constantly hitting our inboxes, and so you've got that problem. Insider threats, sometimes they're unintentional, but they make it harder for cybersecurity folks.
Sure, the human in the loop, right, is always the weakest link. So they're an insider. So by definition, that is a huge threat, even though it's unintentional. It is. To your point.
It is. And, I spend some time with folks in the oil and gas industry. I'm down in Texas and they're over in Houston. And so we talk about insider threats. Sometimes from their perspective, it's not just the digital threat, but sometimes it's a physical threat. People walk right onto the refinery or the pipeline, and sometimes they can inject their cybersecurity threats just by physically being present. So there's a lot of going on there.
The IoT angle, right?
IoT, absolutely. And then also we've got this challenge of a skills gap. There is the constant, drumbeat of news around how many cybersecurity professionals we need, and the shortage and the gap in knowledge there is a challenge that weakens our defenses and puts hurdles in front of everybody. And then, if you think about what's going on a global scale from a privacy perspective, data privacy, legislation, compliance, all those things complicate things a lot because it's now sort of a patchwork that we have to comply with, and it's changing constantly. Right. And last but not least, you throw AI into the mix. This thing was out of left field. We didn't really expect ChatGPT or the whole generative AI thing. So we're really, I think, sort of in this perfect storm of cybersecurity challenges, and it's complex and it's changing. But the right investments and the right processes and people, and maybe a little help from AI, I think we can certainly come out okay out of the other side of this. So that's what I see at a macro level. If you want to zoom in a little bit,
I want to touch on Cloudflare is an interesting business. I mean, so my question to you, I thought was fairly appropriate based on my knowledge of the company, is: are you a networking vendor who offers cyber, or a cybersecurity vendor who offers networking as a service, right?
Sure.
And I don't know, is that a good question? Is that kind of...
No, it's a great question. I think it's a great question. Cloudflare as a company goes way back 12, 13 years now to the origins of the company. And we did start as a content delivery network, evolved into DDoS mitigation and, some internet security. Cloudflare gets in between the attacker and the origin server or the destination server or whatever you want to protect. Right. And we act as a reverse proxy. So the really cool part about Cloudflare is that we position infrastructure all around the world. Yep. We're in over 285 different cities around the world. And those servers are, again, in the path of traffic between the end user, whether it be a web user or a corporate user, and whatever you're trying to get to.
So let's move on to AI. I just wanted to give the listeners a feel for why you're so up on this stuff. And so, using AI today is not new in cyber, right? I mean, it seems, security information and management systems have been using AI for years. XDR, extended detection and response, EDR, endpoint detection and response, all use AI. So I guess, we had talked about the state of the art, or the current state of cyber. What's kind of the state of the art of AI today, given that Gen AI has moved the needle so quickly around what people think AI is and what it can do?
Yes. I think that certainly the generative AI has risen the awareness of everyone around the industry, around the world, around what AI is, what it's capable of. If you listen to any CEO earnings call nowadays, they're talking about AI because of ChatGPT. And every company's probably thinking right now about, how do I make sure that I'm taking as much advantage as possible of AI so that I don't get left behind, right? I mean, these tools are very powerful. And now people are much more aware of it. They are starting to understand how it could be used in the context of services. Like at Cloudflare, we're applying machine learning in our WAP and our web application firewall. We're using that to apply scoring to traffic so that we don't have to, sort of do that manually with a human trying to score an attack or a vector. We can actually now score in real time using machine learning. We can apply that score and sort of take what used to be a 0 day to like a minus day, right? I mean, we can get ahead of these kinds of attacks potentially before they are really well understood, because the AI can start to score them in some way.
But that's not new, right?
Yeah, well, no, that's not new. That's what I'm saying, that this stuff has been used inside of products and services for a while now. I think what's new is people are really trying to now explain it and how it's being used, and people are trying to understand which vendors are using it in which ways, and really trying to cut through the noise in a way, because we're going to get a lot of noise over the next couple of years around AI and machine learning. There is the same potential for, what used to be called cloud washing, where you just put the word cloud on anything. Sure. Exactly. Well, it's probably going to happen in this context as well. And so it really is up to the buyer to understand where and how it's being applied, and what it's good for and what it's not good for. And
that's exactly where I wanted to go. What is it good for?
Yeah, well, I guess the thing I was talking about a bit was sort of that idea of real-time threat detection and the ability to analyze large amounts of data, unprecedented amounts, right? And do it at a speed that humans could not ever hope to keep up with, right? I mean, you can basically look for anomalies, you can look for that needle in the haystack, you can identify a threat based on patterns and behavioral attributes. It really facilitates that idea of intercepting these threats at an earlier stage and preventing the damage that otherwise might happen. And so, we get into this mode of being able to predict things a little bit better and be more proactive. And then we can also apply that same kind of machine learning or AI in the response. If something does happen to get through, we don't have to wait, hours. We may be able to start responding instantaneously and aid in the automating the response. And we already use automation, but automation isn't always adapting to the situation. AI can help because AI can now determine which is the right path and which automation you want to run, and it can look at certain checkpoints along the way and make sure that we are getting the results that we want from that automation, right? And you can basically have a little bit more intelligence involved in that automation.
I mean, could you see a scenario where the AI would write new scripts and write new automation in real time to deal with real-time threats?
It's hard to predict what AI will be capable of, but you could imagine a virtual cybersecurity analyst that's sitting there side by side, a co-pilot. They use the term co-pilot all the time in the context of AI, and so you could imagine it would tremendously upskill an entry-level analyst by having a co-pilot next to them, helping them navigate the dashboard. Maybe the dashboard's new, maybe they don't know where to look for something,
right?
Maybe there's some scripting that they have to do in the context of the dashboard to write a quick script. Well, the coding co-pilot could help with that. Data analysis, writing complex queries that might be required to go look across lots and lots of log files. That's something that already can be accelerated with AI and LLM. I mean,
how are the bad guys using it today?
Well, look, I know that they're using AI to write better phishing emails. We know that for sure. It accelerates your mastery of the English language and your mastery of grammar, and makes it easier for you to craft a better phishing email.
In the voice of, well, check this out. So
voice.
you've done a business email compromise attack. You've gotten into the executives' accounts. You've downloaded a tranche of their emails. You feed that into ChatGTP and say, write me an email in the voice of this guy or this woman, right? And it's going to do that religiously for you. Am I
see?
Right?
I think that you're right on. It is going to help them exploit human weaknesses in a variety of ways. And so an email is just the tip of the iceberg. You mentioned social engineering. Social engineering attacks come in a lot of forms. Every quarter when our CEO does a earnings call and he's very tied up, there's the attackers start to send text messages pretending to be him. So and sometimes they make it through, right? Somebody actually clicks on those things, and so that's exploiting a human, or reacts, or gets distracted, right? It's just a mechanism that distracts people from what might be a multi-vector attack. It might be a combined DDoS attack, or a phishing attack, or a very targeted. The thing you mentioned was deep fake. Using the voice of someone or the image of someone. I already am experimenting with these tools just so I know how they work, but there are tools that you can take. I could take this podcast recording and I could make a voice recording of you or I saying whatever we wanted to say. And it wouldn't be very difficult because the tools are readily available. And you combine those things with reputational damage from a compromising video or a compromising visual that might not be even true. But when you put it all together, the CEO or the board member or somebody in the company might start to actually give and say, okay, let's just pay these guys to go away, right? And that's what they're ultimately after, is extracting some form of ransom. And they're going to ratchet up the tactics and the strategies and use all of these together. And AI will make that easier because it will automate and adapt and make the process easier for the bad guys. Yeah, most attacks is not a break-in, it's a login. They're basically finding a credential and they log in, and sometimes they get that credential using a phishing email. And most attacks begin with a phishing email because it's very easy eventually to find somebody that will click something and hand over their credentials, right? So, eventually that happens. The way to protect against that, and I'll just, double down on this every chance I get, is making sure you have some form of multi-factor authentication that is not phishable. Having a security key, a hardware key, something where you're not handing over a 6-digit PIN, because they're going to get the PIN too. They're going to trick you into giving your username, your password, and your PIN.
If the PIN
and
doesn't
that's
change,
when they go.
the PIN needs to.
Well, the PIN can change very rapidly, and they can still use it very rapidly. Like they can take what they're going to pretend to be the man in the middle, and in real time. And there's another way that AI can help. It can basically wait for a credential to come in. As it's harvested, it goes and plays that credential back against all the known destinations that might be, appropriate, and then finds the way in. When attackers get a credential, they need to go see if it works. They need to go see if it works, at a destination. If it was a consumer credential, they're going to go try your bank. They're going to go try your Apple ID. They're going to go try all these different things that they might be able to get with your credential. If it's an enterprise ID, they're going to go try to log into your Okta or your identity store, or maybe your VPN, or they're going to try to find their way in using that credential, and then see what they can do. They can move horizontally.
But if your factor times out after a few minutes, which they do, this all happens. So we're again back to AI. This all has to happen very quickly. And if the bad guys are using AI to run all these credentials in almost batch mode, right? Then is that kind of where you're going?
Exactly where I'm going. And AI can pretend to be a human better than an automated script can, because it can, you're going to have something that can pause when it should pause, and it can pretend to be a user by accidentally typing the password wrong one time. I mean, it mimics, it can, or potentially can mimic a human better than a traditional script could.
See, the difference today, though, it would have been what we would have talked about a year ago or 2 years ago, is it gets faster with AI, right? Today, it's better and faster.
And more pervasive, and like everywhere. It's not one Twitter account doing it. It's potentially hundreds of Twitter accounts, and they all look a little bit different because the AI is now able to do that at scale, right? And they all can they can exist in lots of different communities simultaneously. The real threat is when they can go down into a particular ecosystem within social media and pretend to be a particular persona, and really become part of that community in a way. And it can look at all the emails that it's ever collected and all the data on social media and make a very informed, targeted attack against an individual. And that's what we were talking about, in those situations where the deepfakes really start to hurt, because it's not just an image. It looks very legitimate, right? It's all those things together.
Correctly.
The bad guys don't have to do much to cause a lot of problems for the enterprise, and the enterprise has to do a whole lot to detect and mitigate and clean up and do all of those things that they have to do. It's so asymmetric in terms of the cost, so to speak. From the bad guy doesn't have any real costs associated with him. He has all the time in the world to do what he does. He's at such a distance that he has really no threat of law enforcement. It's so far away geographically, and from a geopolitical perspective, there's no enforcement going on. All that war has sort of made a fog of war and allowed us to do things without allowed the bad guys to do things without any regard for actually coming to justice.
Okay, so we've talked on this already, but I want to make sure that I ask how does make sure we address this specifically. How is AI going to make that easier for the enterprise?
Well, you brought up XDR earlier, and XDR is sort of that ability to detect and
extended detection and response, right?
Exactly. Extended detection and response. And I sort of look at that technology. If I go back in time, in the old days of IT, we used to create monitoring systems to monitor all of our networks and our devices, and we'd want to sort of roll that up into a manager of managers, so to speak, and try to get the single pane of glass, basically get it all in one place. And now we want to get all that data from all of our endpoints, from all of our cloud workloads, our on-prem, our identity logins, emails, network, anything happening anywhere. And they're starting to correlate, and that correlation helps them detect these threats earlier. They're using AI, they're looking for patterns. Those tools have AI embedded in them, and they are looking for those anomalies that don't fit the normal patterns. They're things that would be very difficult for a human to detect and correlate, but they're very easy for an AI to see and learn from, because they're seeing so much traffic over so much time. They're starting to see traffic patterns that look sort of normal. And then when one comes along that doesn't look normal, it's like, oh, well, I need to, put that in a category where I maybe need to go investigate. And then you take maybe another set of AI tools to sort of go through that investigation. And then it bubbles up to something where maybe you bring in the actual analyst to start to look at it with you.
And then that next layer we've touched on is using AI to help the analysts make better decisions in real time, right? And have that, it's not there yet, but the potential for that Gen AI chatbot to be the co-pilot is, it's just such an obvious use case, right?
It is very obvious. Anything with the dashboard, anything with a knowledge base behind it, anything where you're normally clicking around and trying to navigate and drill down into something, it would be very easy to just say to the chatbot, give me the top 5 right now. What should I be working on? And then it goes and finds those top 5 and bubbles them. And
I can see where you pull in your threat intelligence feeds, right? And then AI is also sifting through all of that.
Another place that you sort of triggered as you were talking, something in the back of my mind, whenever an incident of a certain level gets triggered, there's a lot of activities that go on inside the company. Like inside of Cloudflare, we open up chat rooms specifically for an incident. We invite certain people to the incident. Certain people get messages and pages and all that kind of stuff. That's an automation, right? That automation drives that. And even within those chat rooms, there are bots. Sometimes we can ask the bot for some information about a user and it goes off and runs a query. Okay. But imagine
you're doing that now.
If you had we're doing some of that now, but it's not AI driven. Okay. The AI is the next stage that I'm sort of thinking about. Well, if the AI is in there with us in the chat room and a new analyst comes to the party, so to speak, and now we need to bring him or her up to speed very quickly, the AI could potentially scan the chat room and sort of say, okay, what do I need to know right now? Like, what is the latest, greatest? And it could potentially go run the query, see if the incident's still happening, see if the temperature is in the red, or is it in the yellow, or is it in the green? And it could bring all that material together very quickly. And again, it's like a co-pilot. It's just a matter of helping them be more efficient, more effective, more aware. And you could have that in a variety of contexts. It could be in a chat room. It could be in a dashboard. It could be on a mobile. If I could ask the AI to summarize for me, what do I need to know? And it could bring together the really important critical information, who's involved, who's on it, who's on pager duty right now, who's running point on this incident, what's the phone number of that person, I need to get a hold of that person. Those things are sometimes hard to get at. And for new employees, it's especially hard. I mentioned I joined Cloudflare about 18 months ago. It takes a while to get up to speed to the point where you know how to interact with all the systems that are at your new company, right? Imagine a brand new cybersecurity engineer, fresh out of school, joining new company for the first time.
Junior one.
How are they? Yeah, junior. How are they supposed to get up to speed, and how are they supposed to know what they don't know? Well, an AI could potentially advance that so incredibly fast to the point where it brings everybody up to a minimum level very quickly, and then allows them to ask questions. There's no dumb question when you're talking to an AI. There is a dumb question, or feels like a dumb question, if you have to lean over to the senior engineer who's tired of answering your questions. But from an AI perspective, just ask away, right? There's no end to the
There's no
knowledge
fatigue
there,
factor.
That's right. That's right. And we put ChatGPT in front of the Cloudflare knowledge base, and we're giving our users, our customers, the ability to interact with those tools so that they can ask questions instead of search. Search is only so good otherwise would.
Yeah, I've been wondering, I don't know enough about it yet to ask an intelligent question about, but what happens when AI is informing other AI what to do, and that AI is then informing other AI what to do, and that AI is informing other AI what to do, and how do you unwind that chain? That's going to be interesting. Probably already is happening to some degree, but
I'm sure. Well, I mean, look at it. There is already mountains of text being generated by ChatGPT, making its way out onto the web. and then that becomes, input into other AI. There was a news article the other day that showed, they did a search on Google about how many times the phrase as a large language model or as an AI language model, the thing that is the disclaimer that ChatGPT says before it starts to answer your questions. It's that little phrase that
I'm an AI. I don't know. I have no idea what I'm talking about.
As an AI, I can only give you so much. Well, that's starting to show up in a lot of text out on the internet, starting to show up in homework papers. People are kids are accidentally pasting that into their homework. And that is feeding other AI. So we're going to see this, round and round and round. And so again, the AI will consume the API because they'll know that data is, at least it's coming from the company directly.
But that sounds to me like a SolarWinds problem for enterprise, where it's a, not a backdoor, what's it called? The SolarWinds attack was a supply chain attack. This sounds like that, where you're going to infect the AI. The AI is then will be sending either bad data or
potentially,
right, or
prompt injection. Sometimes you think about they use that term, prompt injection. I think though that what I was getting at is we need to make sure that the APIs are protected just like we protect the website or the web application. Make sure it can't be DDoSed. Make sure that people can't abuse the API using, maybe we'll put rate limits around it and say only, you can only hit this thing so many times per minute, and otherwise it's going to trip up, some anomaly. We're going to detect it because and credentials get played back against APIs. That's another place that those harvested credentials can be tested. And if you don't have the right protections and mechanisms in place, you could potentially try hundreds or thousands of those credentials in rapid fire, and nobody would know the difference because the protocols on the API are designed for automated, automation, so to speak.
Hopefully it gets more effective. We keep talking about the needle in the haystack analogy. I think the more appropriate analogy is the needle inside of a stack of needles, and finding that one needle that's just a little bit longer than the other ones. And that's really, I think, what cybersecurity is up against today. Would you agree?
That's a good way to think about it. It is really a challenge, and humans are good and we need them, and we need to continue to train them and hire them, but we need to give them the superpowers that I think come with AI and the co-pilot, so to speak. It really it enhances the human to be a better professional in that context. The AI will help filter out the noise and make it help these professionals in cybersecurity at least work on the stuff that really needs their attention, rather than just the sort of unending noise that is constant in those systems that you look at. You really can't. It's hard to keep up, right? It's just so hard. And I think the AI is going to at least help us filter through some of that stuff.
Well, and if you were dealing with one incident a day, you wouldn't need any of this. You just need somebody who knew something about cybersecurity saying yes or no, right? But it's not. It's 100,000 incidents a day, right?
That's right.
So, okay. Interesting. Well, John, thank you very much. Great conversation.
Hey, well, thanks for having me. Thanks for the chat. I've enjoyed it. And
we'll do it again sometime.
Let me know if I can ever help you again on some kind of a podcast or event or something like that. I'm always happy to
think of an idea, something you want to talk about that's relevant to a wide range of the people in the industry, and give me a shout.
Happy to do it.
Cheers.
Thank you.
If you liked this episode, please tell your friends and check out our other shows. You can find Inside DT on all the major hosting platforms, including Apple, Amazon, Spotify, and Google. Talk to you soon.